Thank you for joining us today. I am Kimberly Wickert from the University of Kentucky Human Development Institute in Retain, Kentucky. My preferred pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm a mid-career white female with blonde hair and glasses. I'm wearing a black and white collared sweater with a pink jacket, and I have a virtual blue Retain background. I'll be reviewing a few housekeeping items before we get started. The captioning feature is enabled, but you can disable it if you wish to do so. And we will be monitoring the Q&A and the chat box throughout the presentation. So please put any questions or comments or feedback there so you can join in our discussion today. You will be receiving a survey following the presentation today, and we appreciate your willingness to take just a few minutes and complete it to provide feedback on the presentation today and to help us plan for future presentations. So the information that we are presenting today is intended for informational purposes and does not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the University of Kentucky, HDI, or its individual employees. We do attempt to provide accessible, accurate, and current information. So I'd like you to join us, if you are able, for our next Implement Seminar series. It talks about when a worker is ill or injured and their recovery and return to work can be impacted by population health, social determinants of health, and community health workers. We will be joined by Jessica Sass, the Director of UK Population Health, to learn how population health, social determinants of health, and community health workers can promote a successful return to work outcome. I did put the registration link and the date, which is November 15th from noon to 12:30 in the chat as well. So today our objectives are to learn the hierarchy for stay at work and return to work success, to learn to promote stay at work and return to work success through hierarchical options, and here retain support to promote success. So today I have my esteemed colleague, Derek Vincent, joining me. So please join me in welcoming Derek, who will be sharing specific examples of how Retain Return to Work coordinators have helped participants achieve success in their work goals. Derek has experience as a counselor with the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. He was a senior return to work coordinator with Retain Kentucky and now serves as our enhanced return to work coordinator supervisor. So Derek, thank you for partnering with me today to share how the return to work hierarchy has been a successful tool for our Retain participants in their stay at work and return to work goals.
Thank you, Kimberly. All right,
sure.
Thanks a lot.
So when considering how someone can stay at work or return to work, we tend to focus on the job the individual is working or most recently performed before they came off the job. Well, this is always our first goal. Exploring other options can increase their stay at work and return to work success. We refer to this as the return to work hierarchy. It's frequently used in the workers' compensation system, and research demonstrates that the use of the return to work hierarchy minimizes disruption in the worker's life following an illness or injury, promoting the most cost-effective, efficient, and permanent reemployment for that worker. According to the RAND Institute for Civil Justice, having a return to work program in place reduces the length of an injured employee's absence by an average of 3.6 weeks. For an employee who faces a permanent disability, a return to work program reduces the average number of weeks out of work by 12.6 weeks. So it's key as a rehabilitation professional working with a worker to assess each level of the return to work hierarchy sequentially before moving on to the next one. There are 4 levels of the return to work hierarchy that we are going to review today, and they're listed here, and you can see they're same job, same employer. different job, same employer, same job, different employer, and different job, different employer. Again, you can see the focus is on keeping the worker at their employer first and foremost before exploring options at another place of employment. We're going to move on and look at each level, and Derek's going to share examples of participants we have assisted at Retain in each level of the hierarchy. And the attached are examples of services provided to study participants by Retain Return to Work coordinators. Every participant receives individualized support of their return to work coordinator, development of a return to work plan, and connections to community resources to assist them in overcoming barriers to returning to or staying at work. Retained services are provided to participants as part of a research study and vary based on identified needs as well as participant engagement. So the first goal is to return the injured worker to the original employer in the original job. And when we say original employer and same employer, we refer to the employer at the time the worker was diagnosed with their illness or injury, or that they had an exacerbation or issue that created the barrier to the stay at work or return to work. This is important for the worker, but it's also important for the employer to be able to retain that valued employee, especially given the current labor market. By returning to the original job and the employer when able to do so, it avoids learning not only a new employment setting, but also learning new work tasks. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Derek, and he's going to share our first example of the first level of the return to work hierarchy.
Thank you, Kimberly. I want to first start by saying that even though it's a hierarchy, each level, one's not easier than the other. They all have their own challenges and procedures as well. The first hierarchy here, stay at work story, is from James. James is a 63-year-old male. He was referred to Retain Kentucky by his doctor following a stroke that resulted in decreased cognitive, visual, communication, and fine motor skill abilities. Additionally, James had comorbidities of diabetes and hypertension impacting his ability to work. James worked as an environmental services worker at a hospital for 4 years and wanted to retain health and staying in his role. At the request of the Retain Return to Work coordinator, James's doctor provided written work restrictions that he forwarded to the employer for ongoing accommodations based on James' current functional abilities, resulting in a condensed work shift that met his ability to physically perform the job given his decreased stamina. The return to work coordinator identified a barrier in James's limited use and knowledge of technology and created an email account for James with instructions on how to use this resource as a tool to assist in his memory deficit specific to medical appointments and communication with his employer and healthcare provider. Another way he helped to overcome the technology barrier was by meeting James in person to get his signature for release of information so the return to work coordinator could assist in communicating with his therapy providers for scheduling services prescribed by his doctor. The return to work coordinator assisted James with social determinant barriers to health, including rent, utilities, and transportation by contacting nonprofit agencies that help overcome those challenges and connecting them to James. The return to work coordinator also helped James to make appointments to see specialists since James was having difficulty remembering to make and keep scheduled appointments.
Thank you, Derek. That's a great example. And I'd also like to point out that while it was same job, same employer, the return to work coordinator worked with James as well as his healthcare provider and his employer to be able to look at creative ways for him to return to work in that gradual return to work program. So that's a great success story. Thank you for sharing. So we're going to move on and talk about the next level in the return to work hierarchy, which is different job, same employer. And this is to encourage the employer, oftentimes, if they have the ability to modify the original job or to provide employment in a different job at that employer. We've been able to help participants return to work at this level of the hierarchy in temporary as well as permanent capacities. And that's something that's good to keep in mind as well. From a temporary capacity, employers can also use this level of the hierarchy to transition a worker back to work while they're still recovering, but can perform work during that process that may not be their original position. One example of this hierarchy was helping a participant through our work experience survey process. They were able to identify other tasks and ultimately positions in their employer that they could perform based on their skills, abilities, including their physical and cognitive capacities. I'm going to ask Derek to share another example with us as we move on to the next slide.
We supported a participant who worked in a retail setting as a manager, but due to physical and cognitive support needs from her illness, she moved into another position as a cashier, allowing her to have more flexible work schedule that was more aligned with her post-illness capacities. We provided multiple support, including an assistive technology assessment and a job analysis.
Thank you. That's another great example. So we are going to now look at the third level of the return to work hierarchy, which is same job, different employer. And this is where we are looking to assist the worker in finding employment with a different employer in the same job or a closely related job or industry. This happens when the worker may have exited from their previous employer due to the length of time they have been off work, or when they can find another position within the same job title that has requirements that may be more aligned with their capacities. Derek, let's go ahead and take a look at Heidi.
After having a stroke, Heidi called Retain because she wanted to go back to work in the healthcare industry. In addition to providing individualized services, the Return to Work coordinator helped Heidi access benefits through her workplace and the insurance company. Due to impaired vision and short-term memory loss after the stroke, the Return to Work coordinator also coordinated services with Heidi's physical therapist and optometrist to help overcome these barriers to return to work. A referral for an assistive technology assessment was made and tools were selected to support Heidi's recovery and functional abilities. Until Heidi's driver's license was restored, she was referred to a community partner for transportation and ride-share services. The Return to Work coordinator guided Heidi in her job search, and she secured a position with another healthcare provider, where she continued to be successful in her role as an occupational health nurse.
Thank you. That's another great story. And as you can see, she was able to stay within the same job title as a nurse, but moved into a different employment setting that was more aligned with her current capacities. So thank you for sharing that. So the fourth level of the return to work hierarchy is different job, different employer. And this is where we assist the worker in finding a job that is in another industry. This often occurs when their injury or illness precludes them from performing work they have in their previous position, or doing so may put them at risk for further injury or illness. Our Career 9-step process is key in helping participants identify employment that is within their interests, abilities, and current capacities, as well as jobs that are readily available in their labor market. So these are all things that we do to help them be successful when they are at that fourth level of the hierarchy, to prepare them to look for that different job within a different employment setting. And Derek, I'm going to go back to you and have you share another success story with us.
Kathy was actually one of my cases. She came to us with significant physical impairments, and she had some issues with transportation at her current job. Next slide, please. She had a physical diagnosis that affected her job duties, such as meeting a lot of the physical demands, like standing for long periods of time, repetitive lifting, and unloading merchandise. She could not return to the same job after experiencing her injury. However, she did have a lot of transferable skills that would be useful in other jobs. We reviewed steps to restarting her career through our 9-step process. And she also had an assistive technology assessment to find out recommendations for her new job. She eventually was able to find a sedentary job, and her new employer was very open and welcoming at providing accommodations. As far as assistance with transportation, her original job was 26 miles away. This new job was only 1 block from her residence, which she was just overjoyed about. So that removed that transportation barrier in need, which is especially useful when the gas prices were so high.
Absolutely. That's a great success story. And I think that's a really a great way to round out the hierarchy and the 4th level. And I know oftentimes participants and workers will come to us and, are going through a process of accepting that they may not be able to go back to their original position or their original employer. But I really appreciate how you've shared these stories today and highlighted how return to work coordinators and support can help people get to where they need to be in the return to work hierarchy based on their current capacities and their interests and their abilities, as well as their work history and what's available in the local labor market. And you've done a great job of showing how you've collaborated and the team of return to work coordinators has collaborated with healthcare providers and employers and other rehab professionals to be able to support our participants in that process. So I really appreciate your input today, Derek, and sharing those stories with us.
Thank you, Kimberly.
Just as a reminder, because you may know somebody who needs services, our eligibility criteria to support participants in their work goals and positive outcomes is that they must be a Kentucky resident. They must either be currently employed or have worked in the last 12 months and have not applied for or are receiving SSI or SSDI. Their injury or reason for their inability to work must not be work related. And our referral process is easy. There are ways to reach us that are listed here, include calling us at 859-562-3251. You can email us at retain@uky.edu. or visit us at www.kyretain.org. And we also have our participant screener that is available and also on our website. You can scan this and then be asked the eligibility questions, and it will take you to our intake coordinator queue, and one of our intake coordinators will reach out to you within 1 business day. So we're very timely in making sure that we get to participants and start the process immediately. I see, let's see. Oh, Derek put the participant screener in the chat, so thank you for that. Just as a reminder, we do have the registration for next month's Implement Seminar Series in the chat as well. And we're getting to that point that we're coming to the end of the year and are looking for your feedback, input, and suggestions for topics for our employment seminar series for next year, 2023. So please reach out to me, kimberly.wickert@uky.edu. If you have topics that you would like to hear about in our employment seminar series next year, I would very much welcome your feedback. I don't see any other questions or comments in the chat. So with that, I would just like to say thank you very much for joining us today. Again, there will be a survey that will be sent out to you. If you would just take a couple minutes and complete it, we would greatly appreciate it. And thank you, Derek, for being my co-presenter today, and for Brandon, who's behind the scenes making all of this happen. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.